What does a ping pong ball and a golf ball have to do with a shotgun shell? Find out on this video. Today, we're going to be looking at one of the most important questions in waterfowl hunting, and that is, what's the best shotgun shell? It actually should be, what's the best shotgun shell for you? I'm Joel Strickland, and this is part 2 of my shotgunning series, right here on Surviving Duck Season. When it comes to shotgun ammo, there are so many options to choose from, and it can be really confusing whether it's the shot size, the cartridge length, or the shot type. What waterfowl ammo do you shoot? Let me know down in the comments. Now, like I said, this is part 2 of my shotgunning series. If you missed part 1, make sure you watch it. Now on this multiple video series, we're going to be answering your questions about shotguns, ammo, and choke tubes. And there's a lot to cover over quite a few videos, but today we're going to be talking about shotgun ammo. Now when you go to your favorite hunting store to buy ammo for duck hunting, you've got lots of choices. There's so many decisions to be made. Steel, bismuth, some variety of tungsten, or even some blend. But when you look at a box and see the numbers on it, it can be confusing. Right here, 12 gauge 3" is pretty easy to understand. And the velocity metrics right here tells you how fast a shot leaves the barrel. But the shot size and the ounces is often where many get tripped up, and it's where the big trade-off discussion occurs. And we're going to get into all of that today. Now, whether you're brand new to hunting or you've hunted for years, on this video, you're going to find out some interesting and very helpful information about waterfowl ammunition, so you'll know how to choose what's best for you. Now, I went on my very first duck hunt in 1985 and became an avid waterfowler the very next year when I was able to start driving myself. Since that time, I've used a lot of different types of ammo, but I started out shooting lead. Now, needless to say, I've seen a tremendous amount of changes in shot shells over the years. In 1986, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife announced its progressive ban on the use of lead shot for waterfowl hunting beginning the fall of 1987, with a total nationwide ban for the 1991-92 season. For over 100 years prior to that, there had been recorded evidence of waterfowl lead poisoning from them ingesting pellets. You know, what goes up must come down, and the lead shot that didn't hit a duck fell to the ground, and that's what was picked up by ducks and geese. So when the announcement was made to ban lead, there was some pushback from people not believing in the science. I'll say I was quite skeptical. So I began cutting open the gizzards of the ducks I shot. And no kidding, many of them had lead pellets in their craw. Whether or not they would have died from lead poisoning, who knows? But the pellets were there. I remember how bad the steel shot was in those early days. Everyone that I knew that duck hunted talked about how horrible it was. We found out pretty quick that shooting ducks inside 20 yards was fine for steel. If you're shooting ducks landing in the timber, no problem, but it was very frustrating to shoot a duck at further distances and see them get hit multiple times and then just fly away, crippled. It was a completely different experience than shooting lead. But the propaganda from the shotshell companies and from the government agency would have you to believe that there was virtually no performance difference at all. Let me read to you a portion from an article published in 1987. Hunters oppose steel shot. They claim that steel shot is not as effective as lead because it's lighter and does not carry well, resulting in the crippling of more birds. The argument, however, has been refuted by a number of studies. Here we go. There have been more than 25 years of testing of substitute steel shot in more than 15 major tests by federal agencies, state agencies, the arms industry, separate and in combination, all kinds of tests, fixed birds, birds in free flight, fixed shotguns, shotguns in the field, professional shooters, observed shooters. The test results differ hardly at all. In fact, up to 40 yards, there's little noticeable difference between available steel and conventional lead loads. Right. All hunting tests have shown that lead and steel bag, and cripple essentially the same numbers. Really? It was all part of a very intentional propaganda campaign that someone thought the ends justify the means. Companies and the government telling us that there's no difference, yet we all knew there was. Ducks were dying of lead poisoning, I get it, but don't lie to us and tell us that steel and lead are the same, because they're not. It was at that young age I learned a very valuable lesson that truth in advertising may be their truth, but not the truth. Okay, I want to know if you hunted with lead back in the day and then switched over to steel. Tell me what you remember. Let me know down in the comments. So why is steel shot not as good as lead shot? Well, that can be answered in math, but I'm not a mathematician. And even if I were to try to explain some of it to you, I don't even fully understand a lot of it. Density, weight, size, volume, kinetic energy, those are all words in math that we can use to help illustrate that and define what some of that stuff means. But what I thought I would do is give you an object lesson to help you understand it a little bit better, at least the way I can understand it myself. I've got a ping pong ball and a golf ball right here. Now, most of you have probably held these in your hand before. A ping pong ball is very, very light and wispy. If you were to throw it, it doesn't go very far. It doesn't even make it to the target. A golf ball, on the other hand, is a lot heavier, and you can throw it, and you can throw it a long way. It kind of would represent a light steel pellet in the ping pong ball versus a lead pellet, or maybe even bismuth or TSS or tungsten. It's a lot more dense, a lot heavier, and so it can travel further and have more kinetic energy, more knockdown power at the target. Get your hands on a ping pong ball or a wiffle ball and throw it as hard as you can, and then get a golf ball or a baseball and throw that as hard as you can, and see the difference. That's kind of like the difference in shooting steel shot versus shooting lead or something else more dense. That's why density is important, and we're going to be talking more about that on this video. Well, fortunately, steel has seen some improvement in the last 30 years, and we also got some alternatives. In the mid-1990s, shot shells with pellets made from bismuth became available and legal to use for duck hunting, so I bought some and started using them. Immediately, I saw the difference. It performed similarly to lead. This is one of those shells right here. I found several of them when I was going through some old shells a couple weeks ago. This is from the Bismuth Cartridge Company. I also found some 410 shells right here. We used to shoot them in the timber. That was a lot of fun. If I can find some of that old footage doing that, I'm going to have to get it out and show it to you sometime. Well, then around 1999, a new non-toxic contender was on the market, Heavy Shot. Now, that product, when they came out with it, was absolutely incredible. An alloy of tungsten and iron, and it had a density greater than lead. I shot it for probably 10 years. But as time went on, it seemed like the product began costing more and more, but its performance and density seemed to be getting less and less. If you used Heavy Shot back in the day, you know what I'm talking about. Well, in the meantime, the Bismuth Cartridge Company went out of business in like 2006 or 2007, leaving a void in the market of bismuth for quite a while. I learned of a new shot shell company in 2018, Boss. They made bismuth shot shells. I was very excited when I heard about this, remembering the bismuth that I'd shot many years before. So I bought a case of 2 3/4 inch number 5s. Man, it was great, and I've hunted with it quite a bit ever since then. Then in 2020, I got my hands on some TSS, Tungsten Super Shot from Apex Ammunition. It was number 9s for my 20 gauge, and I was absolutely blown away with the performance. Expensive? Yes. But as far as performance goes, you can't compare anything to TSS. So as far as legal ammo, I've shot just about anything you can think of at a duck or goose. Now today we have many choices in shot shells, and there are lots of trade-offs to discuss. So let's first talk about the anatomy of a shot shell. Most people, when they think about shotgun ammo, are only considered with the pellets, the size, shape, and type of pellets. But what about all the other components? they're really important too. These are things that make the pellets perform the way they're supposed to. So this is a shot shell, and most waterfowl ammunition has the same types of components, but there are a lot of tweaks or differences in those components. Shot shell companies spend lots of time and money researching and testing every single component to get the perfect formula, unique to their product. Now this is the hull, and it's usually made of plastic. It holds everything that goes inside the shot shell. Now this is the primer right here, and that's the point where the firing pin from the gun strikes to ignite the charge of the shell. Then there's the powder and the wad. Now the wad does several things. It cushions the shot from the blast when the powder ignites. Some shells contain a one-piece wad and some two pieces. Wads contain a built-in shot cup, meaning it holds the shot. This helps protect the barrel from the shot coming into contact with it, which is especially important when shooting super hard materials like steel or tungsten. When pellets leave the gun, they eventually separate from the wad. Some wad designs help make this happen quicker. Others hold the pellets a little longer. Now remember, this all happens in just a tiny fraction of a second. The wad also helps with the pressure and fills the cartridge's void. If you didn't have a wad or some type of wad, your shot shell just wouldn't work properly. Now, in addition to these things, some companies use buffering. They believe it helps cushion the shot, helps it to fly smoother for better patterns. And some companies add fillers because of open space left within the shell. The crimp on the very end of the shell varies by different manufacturers, and the crimp is a big deal. Most of the companies that I've spoken with are quite proud of the way they crimp their shells. Now we can get way into the weeds on all this stuff. I'm not going to do that today, but like I said, there can be variances in every single component. Change one tiny thing and it can result in major performance differences when you pull the trigger. The length of shell can make a difference. Different crimps, roll crimps, star crimps, slow burning powder, fast burning powder, different sizes, different shapes, made from different materials. That's a lot of stuff, but you get the idea. It all makes a difference. What's the different types of shot? Well, like I said at the beginning of this video, lead used to be what pellets were made of for duck hunting. It was dense and cheap. Now, its density is 11.29 grams per cubic centimeter. And at the time of the production of this video, there are 4 main types of material that non-toxic pellets are made from: steel, bismuth, tungsten alloys, and TSS, tungsten supershot. Steel pellets are very hard, but are the lightest or lowest density of all other shot. Its density is 7.8 grams per cubic centimeter. Steel pellets are normally super spherical and smooth, although there are a few companies who've modified the shape of their pellets. When steel was first made available, it was thought to be quite expensive, and it was compared to lead. However, today it's the least expensive type of ammo for waterfowl hunting. Bismuth pellets are very close to the performance of lead. Its density is 9.6 grams per cubic centimeter. Most companies are able to make bismuth pellets round and smooth. Bismuth has a nature of being brittle and can crack or fragment, so some manufacturers have addressed this by bonding or plating other metals to the bismuth. In general, it's the middle of the road in cost between steel and tungsten alloy shot. Tungsten alloy, also known as tungsten matrix, tungsten polymer, or heavy shot. Tungsten itself has a density of 19.25 grams per cubic centimeter. Now that's full strength. However, tungsten in shot is combined with other metals like nickel or iron and even plastic polymers to create a more affordable but less dense pellet. Densities range from just above steel at 9 to heavier than lead at 13 grams per cubic centimeter. Because of the nature of the production process, many of the tungsten alloy shells, such as heavy shot, are mostly irregular type pellets, often called slag. What does that do for your pattern? I'll show you what I learned on a future video. Now, price on tungsten alloys varies, but it's often 5 times as much as steel. TSS, Tungsten Super Shot. TSS is very hard, and the pellets are rounder than tungsten alloys. TSS has the most amount of tungsten in a pellet and is nearly full-strength tungsten at 18 grams per cubic centimeter, making it nearly twice as dense as bismuth, but at nearly 4 times the cost. What size shot should I use? When steel shot was first introduced, we were told that because of its lighter density, you should go 2 sizes larger than you would if you shot lead. For example, if you shoot 4 lead, then you should shoot number 2 steel shot. That narrative is still widely accepted today. But what if you never duck hunted with lead shot? How would you know which shot to choose? Well, chances are, if you're younger than 50, you probably didn't duck hunt with lead. And if you did, you'd likely be so young that you probably wouldn't have remembered much of the experience. Well, when we shot lead, I used 4s and 5s and sometimes 6s in 2 3/4. When we first started shooting steel shot, me and my buddies, we mostly shot 2s, unless we were in the woods, and then we'd shoot 4s. Now, most ammunition companies have suggestions of shot choices that you can look up. I'm going to break it down and make it a lot more simple to understand. The most common pellet sizes for waterfowl loads are BB for the biggest to 9s being the smallest. Yeah, I know there's T-shot and triple Bs, and there's also a 10 shot, but the most common shot is between BBs to 9s. Now there's a lot of difference in those shot sizes. The idea is the bigger the pellet, the more knockdown power. However, there's a trade-off. There's always a trade-off, and that is the larger the pellet, the less amount of pellets there will be for the same size load. For example, an 1.25 ounce number 4 steel shot has 239 pellets versus 155 pellets in an 1.25 ounce steel number 2. Which do you pick? Well, if you follow the conventional wisdom of 2 shot sizes larger than lead, then most people would choose the number 2. In that scenario, the trade-off is less pattern density for greater pellet density, meaning you give up a better pattern for more knockdown power. Is that the right choice? 20 yards and closer, just about any size steel shot is going to drop a mallard-sized duck. It's at distances greater than 25 yards that choosing the right shot size can make a big difference, which is why most steel shot hunters choose 1s, 2s, or 3s for the most part. I'll get more into the details on that in a future video. The advantage of using other types of shot like bismuth or tungsten is that you can go down in size, which allows you to have an even greater pellet count, helping your pattern tremendously. For example, an 1.25 ounce number 5 bismuth, which is a very common load, has 235 pellets in the payload, almost identical pellet count to a number 4 steel shot, but with much more knockdown power. And when we look at an ounce of TSS number 9s, also a very common load, it has 362 pellets, giving you the most density in a pattern and lots of knockdown power. Again though, the trade-off for these types of non-toxic ammo, the price. Let's look at the pricing. Steel ranges from 80 cents a round to $1.60. Bismuth is from $1.50 to $2.50 a shell, depending on the manufacturer. Tungsten alloys are all over the place, from $2.75 a shell to $6. And TSS for waterfowl is between $6 and $7 a shell. Ouch! Is it worth it? Is steel shot good enough? Or is bismuth the happy medium? What's the best shot shell, you ask? Well, we're just scratching the surface on all of that. There's still so much more to cover, like payload weight, speed, muzzle velocity. Then there's the shell length. And what's the real performance difference in all of them? Make sure you see every single episode of my shotgun series because I'll be covering all of those things and more. God bless. I'm Joel Strickland, and I'll see you on the next one. I should have played baseball. Okay.
Okay. Now I lost the golf ball.
What'd you do?
That was awesome.